And I thought, well, okay, I'm a nurse. Why would you ever think to not license me?
That's exactly what the state is considering, looking at deregulating hundreds of industries, no longer requiring a license to practice everything from medicine to wiring a home. The state has a December 31st deadline for submitting a plan to the governor to determine whether people who hold an occupational license actually need one.
Those licenses are for services that we use every day. Doctors, nurses, pharmacists, plumbers, inspectors, accountants. They're all more than 240 different professions currently required to be licensed by the state's Department of Safety and Professional Services.
But Wisconsin is now considering becoming one of the first in the nation to deregulate all services. That's causing some concern for people who hold those licenses. They contacted Target 2 for answers. Sarah Thompson started asking some questions.
This is all happening quickly and rather quietly. If you're one of the people who holds an occupational license with the state, you should have received an email recently asking you to fill out a short survey, asking about your job, the cost of schooling, and the value of your license. Here's the problem. As we started asking people about this, many had no idea what I was talking about, making them concerned a decision will be made quickly without much input. These students are the next generation of electricians, enrolled in the Electrical Construction Apprenticeship Program at NWTC.
We want to make sure that things are done right the first time.
Master electrician and instructor Kevin Wigman sees immeasurable value in education and licensing.
This was behind the wall, done by an unlicensed individual.
A Green Bay city inspector recently gave this mangled mess of wiring to Wigman.
That is a fire waiting to happen.
After finding it hidden in the walls of a new home.
The initiative here to eliminate licensure, here's what you can get. And it's, in my opinion, not a very good idea.
Wigman is baffled. The state is now considering deregulating his industry, no longer requiring electricians to hold a license, something he says guarantees they both know what they're doing and maintain safety.
We all say this is ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense. Why?
Why? Good question. Target 2 discovered this is actually state law, proposed in 2017 by Governor Scott Walker and slightly adjusted by the Republican-controlled legislature as part of the last state budget. It orders the Department of Safety and Professional Services to submit a report to the governor and the legislature by December 31st of this year to determine whether occupational licensing for nearly 250 professions is necessary. DSPS tells Target 2 it's looking at regulations in other states, but will ensure it maintains licenses necessary to protect health and public safety. Target 2 obtained an email to a license holder listing more factors, including possible financial burdens or other barriers preventing people from receiving a license. To get input, the agency created an online survey, open 14 days from November 27th to December 10th. Kathy DeMuth just took it.
To not have a license that is going to ensure that you're competent, that you are providing safe care, is going to jeopardize people's lives.
As a Bellin College assistant professor and registered nurse, DeMuth can't understand why healthcare would not be regulated.
The medications, always receiving new medications out in practice today, new procedures. How are they going to ensure that that is going to be somebody who's competent to be able to practice healthcare?
That worry has only increased after an Appleton man was charged Wednesday for claiming he was a doctor but had no medical license to treat patients or prescribe medication.
To think anybody can provide healthcare is becoming more and more complex today.
So that's my main thing is, like, this is for safety for everybody.
Georgie Halverson, owner of Elite Nail School in Madison, first contacted Target 2, worried health concerns in the cosmetology industry are being overlooked.
We work with tons of chemicals, so from the service provider to the client, there are issues, and there can be major injury from on both sides.
Halverson has spent the last several days calling lawmakers and both the current and incoming governors. Target 2 contacted them as well, but like Halverson, we haven't received a response yet.
I have to believe that DSPS, in doing this study, is going to come back and there are professions out there that they're going to say, yes, there is definitely a need to have licensure.
Licensed engineer and Green Bay Public Works Director Steve Grenier hopes this gets no further than talk, arguing the ramifications are simply too severe. Target 2 also asked students about a cost burden and the eliminating of licensing.
I'm totally against it.
We found no one in support, all telling us you can't put a dollar value on that piece of paper. So what now? Anyone can take the survey between now and Monday. We did link to that at WBAY.com. DSPS then has until December 31st to submit a plan to the governor. We've requested that information as soon as it's complete. We'll stay on this and keep you updated on any decisions.
In the last 24 hours, we've been flooded with your comments and responses to our Target 2 investigation we aired just last night at 10 o'clock. We found out the state is conducting a study to determine whether occupational licenses are needed for everything from doctors and pharmacists to electricians and barbers. The Department of Safety and Professional Services is offering an online survey through Monday, gathering information on nearly 250 kinds of jobs and asking about the value of a license, barriers to obtaining it, and cost. It'll be included in a report presented to the governor and legislature by December 31st, who will decide what to do next. Sarah Thompson spent the day today on the phone answering questions and talking with people about this study. Sarah.
Bill, the Department of Safety and Professional Services followed up with us today, pointing out what we reported yesterday, that this study is simply offering recommendations to the legislature, and that it does not mean DSPS will recommend deregulating all the professions it oversees, adding it's not a DSPS decision and any changes go through the legislature and should include public input. I also spoke with more license holders today who believe this review is needed.
It's not an either or, it's both and. So licensing has a very important role, and regulation is important.
But to Albert Walker, occupational licenses do need to be reevaluated. The Green Bay barber says he nearly lost his business because of regulations and rules.
People need to be properly trained for the safety of themselves and the public to deal with that. So there is an important place for it. How much of it is always really the key question.
The Badger Institute, a think tank that's done research and analysis on licensing and has worked with Albert Walker, calls requirements for certain licensing irrational, telling Target 2 a cosmetologist needs about 1,500 hours of training to obtain a license and an EMT needs 180.
It's gotten to the point where a lot of these licenses are actually fencing people out of certain occupations. They're stifling competition, and that's what we're concerned about.
The Institute says Wisconsin has seen an 84% jump in the number of licensed professions in the last 2 years. As Target 2 reported last night, many professionals, from healthcare to electricians, are concerned about public health and safety. The Institute says the focus should instead be on possible barriers to licenses in other professions.
You now need a license to be an auctioneer in Wisconsin, to be a juvenile martial arts instructor, to sell firewood. Is there really a public safety component to a lot of these licenses, or are there alternatives that maybe are not quite so onerous?
The Badger Institute says these 15 states are currently looking at licensing reforms. The DSPS recommendations must be submitted to the governor and the legislature by the end of this year. We do have a link for you to take that survey at WBAY.com.